We're live. We're back. Hey, everybody. My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. And today I'm with Peter Voss, the man who, I'm still like taking this in right now. I can't believe this is the case that I'm doing this, but the man who named AGI. Peter, what a pleasure to have you on this show. Thank you for being on here. So, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Well, I coined the term together with two other people, but yeah, we can get into that.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so I guess just to kick off, AIGO.ai. How do you pronounce that?
I go. Yeah, I
IGO.
go.
So tell
Like
us.
you go, I go. I
It,
go.ai.
so I assume that's what your primal focus is these days.
Correct. Yes.
So do you mind sharing maybe a paragraph or two about what you're building there, what you're talking about, and then
Mhm.
we'll come back to that topic, near the end of the interview. But I like to begin there.
Well, what we are building is we are building AGI. We are building true human level intelligence. That's what my company is doing right now. We have previously commercialized an earlier version of that in our company um, in call center automation. One of our well-known customers was 1-800-Flowers, Harry and David group of companies. We did all of the chat support for them using this technology of that it can truly understand what the customer wants. It can learn the history of what they've asked for before and so on. So it gave a much better customer experience. But about a year and a half ago, we decided to put our commercial business on hold to fully concentrate on actually doing this the last bit to get to full AGI, to full human level intelligence. And the big difference between our commercial version and what we're working on now is the system that we're working on now can truly learn by itself. Whereas the commercial version, we had to do a lot of engineering, which, so for every customer, you had to train it specifically for that customer, which is what everybody else is doing on AI. For every application, for every customer, you need to um, basically do a lot of engineering. But true AGI will be human level. So it'll be like you or I going into a call center and we'll read the manuals, we'll ask some questions, listen to some calls, and so on. So the onboarding is a few hours or maybe a day. We can learn by ourselves, and that is the improvement we're making to our system now, is for it to be able to truly learn autonomously, to learn by itself. And that's the promise of AGI. So that's what my company is working on now.
That is fascinating. I've got a bunch of questions prepared, but I mean,
Mm.
I'd be killing myself if I didn't ask a few off the top here. How far are we from AGI in
I,
your
I
estimation?
Yeah. So I believe with our approach, the approach we're taking, we only like 2 years away from having that. And there's quite a bit we need to talk about. But what everybody else is doing is they have this big data approach, massive training runs that cost billions of dollars now, with tens of trillions of words, training words that they use. But that's not how human intelligence works at all. A child can learn with a few million words. It doesn't need trillions of words to learn language and reasoning. So our system works more the way the human mind works. It can learn with much, much less data, and it needs much less computing power. And the beauty is it can continually learn on an ongoing basis. So as new situations arise, whether it's customer support or whether you're doing programming or accounting or whatever you might be doing, there are constantly new things you need to learn. And our system can do that. You don't need to go back to the factory and retrain it with massive amounts of training runs and data. So I believe with the approach that we have, we can actually get to full human level intelligence in 2 years.
And what does that mean for humanity, for someone who's been thinking about it for this long? I
Mm.
mean, what does that mean? And do you feel that most people are ready for this, or are most people like got their head in the sand still?
Well, ready or not, it's going to happen. So, um, there's really there really is no. It's very unlikely that humanity would just stop developing AI, and whether it's our company and our specific approach, or whether other companies come up with the solution to how to have truly adaptive intelligence, it really is a few years away at most. The technology is just moving ahead, and there are so many benefits to this, both financial and in terms of quality of life. So I see it as a very positive. It really is. Most people, if you talk to them, would like to have the freedom not to have to work. I mean, you talk to people, you know, I mean, 80% of people would straight out say, "Oh, if I didn't have to work, I wouldn't work." It's as simple as that. And there may be 20%, 10%, 20% of people who really love what they're doing, and um, but they would have the freedom to do what they want to do. So it's just really this future of radical abundance. Think of it like, yeah, every basically people not having to work.
I completely buy that. I guess the deeper question is, how do we get there? I think I mean, anybody in their right mind, if you told them, hey, you could just have radical abundance without having to work, everybody would obviously want
Mm.
it. But now, if that means that it's some sort of like government-led UBI, where now
UBI, yeah.
UBI, or somebody has a button they can press, or
Mhm.
is it something that we haven't even come across yet? Is it something that the AI will help us come up with? Like,
Well,
how do we get there?
yeah. Actually, exactly. I do believe that AGI will help us figure that out. I mean, initially, it might be a case of um, having to work fewer hours because the cost of goods and services will dramatically reduce. Things will get cheaper. Cost of goods and services will go down dramatically because human labor is the biggest cost factor in many things. And so, in order to afford goods and services, you'll basically have to work fewer hours initially. But how exactly it'll play out, I'm hoping we'll have a solution that doesn't involve the government of having the arbitrary power of deciding who gets what, because then you get into the whole politics, and if you vote for somebody, they'll give you more money. If you don't vote for them, they'll cut you off. And it's so you really want a system, something more like everybody owning shares in AI companies or something, and that they pay a dividend, but that it's automatic. It's not subject to the whims of some politicians, and of who gets what. Something along those lines. We don't know how exactly it'll pan out, but it's something that definitely think about, and what the best um, methods might be.
Is there a difference between AGI and ASI, or like artificial
Hmm.
super intelligence? Like, where do you see that being the?
Yeah, I actually have a number of articles on Substack, and one of them is exactly on that topic, because um, it's actually quite frustrating how the term AGI itself has been distorted over the years as a marketing term. You get Sam Altman a year ago or so. He said, "Oh, we'll have AGI soon. We know how to get to AGI. We'll have it soon, but it's not going to be a big deal." I mean, I don't know if he was lying, ignorant, or both, or just not thinking about what he was saying. If we have AGI, it will be a big deal. So because companies have realized that they don't actually have a path to AGI. And let me quote Jan LeCun, the chief scientist of Meta until last year. He said, large language models are an off ramp to AGI. a distraction, a dead end. That's how forcefully he puts it. So the current focus of companies is using large language models, but large language models cannot actually get to AGI. And the big labs are actually realizing that, and they're saying we need some additional breakthroughs and so on. So they've now they now started changing their pitch. Instead of saying we'll get to AGI, they're now saying, oh no, we're going straight for ASI, super intelligence. But it's a sort of it's just a gimmick that they have, because super intelligence is really just saying that in a particular domain, so it's like a bait and switch. They're saying basically super intelligence in a particular domain, the AI will be better than human. But that means nothing. Uh, we've had calculators for decades, they're superhuman in their ability. So having narrow superhuman ability isn't the goal that you want. And that's why we coined the term artificial general intelligence, the ability to learn a very wide variety of things autonomously by yourself. So super intelligence is, again, just a marketing term the way it's used now. I actually think it's unnecessary term, because once you get to AGI, it will automatically be superhuman in many aspects. It'll have photographic memory. It'll be able to reason much more, much clearer than humans can. It'll be able to work 24/7 without getting tired. It'll be able to work at a faster pace than humans. So once you get to AGI, it automatically implies that you will have superhuman intelligence. But the way ASI has now been abused is really to say narrow. It'll be superhuman in a particular thing, doing some specific research or whatever. But that's not AGI.
Why do you feel that AGI isn't already here? These systems can reason, they can research, they can learn to some extent, they can see images and decipher what they are. I mean, they do have all these subtle qualities that I personally never thought computers, would have. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, like, where's that delta between where we are today and where AGI is in your mind?
Yeah, it's actually very easy. It's very, very easy to see the difference. The key difference is that they cannot learn incrementally. They cannot. It's impossible. You basically build the models for billions of dollars, and the model itself is frozen. So anything that wasn't pre-trained. Now, people try to get the system to kind of learn new things, about you personalizing and so on. But it's actually not the model itself that's learning it. It's external databases that they have. So it's not an integrated part. And that's really the Achilles heel of these systems. But in any case, I mean, you could test it very easily. People quite a few people claim we already have AGI. It's complete nonsense, because if you had AGI, you would be able to take your model, put it into a call center, and it would be able to learn the task as easily as a human. You would be able to put it into a car and train it for, how long does it take us to learn how to drive? 30 hours of practice. You would be able to you wouldn't need custom hardware and software to drive a car if you had AGI. It's kind of so absurd. We so obviously do not have AGI, human general intelligence, the ability to learn novel tasks with no more data or time than a human needs.
I just have like a bazillion questions on this whole AGI thing, because it's obviously top of mind for many people. But I wanted to just slow it down a little bit and maybe just learn a little bit more about you, Peter, if that's okay.
Sure.
So were you born and raised in East Germany?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
I was going to take us back to East Germany and West Berlin. What do you remember from those earliest years, and what did your parents give you that still shows up today in your work?
Um, Actually, I remember very little. I'm one of these unfortunate people that I remember virtually nothing until the age of like 12 or so.
Mm.
So I have very little memory of my early childhood. I was very fortunate that my parents fled from East Germany to West Berlin. Otherwise, my life would have been very, very different. My father actually died when I was 6 years old. And so my mother remarried, and my stepfather was quite adventurous. So he said, let's go and move to South Africa. So when I was 12 years old, the whole family moved to South Africa. And that just a completely different world to Germany. Germany, everything is so regulated. And, by the time you 14, you already kind of know what your career is going to be for the rest of your life and so on. Whereas South Africa is much more like probably early America, where you can do anything. It's sort of a pioneering type of land. So that gave me a sort of made me more uh, risk taking and just that you can be anything you want basically. You just have to work at it, but it's up to you to do it. It's not that society puts you in a box and says, well, this is what you have to do. So it had quite an influence on me, having on the one hand the sort of the Germanic background, the sort of quality and hard work and the stuff that's drilled into you, and then the being much more adventurous and from South Africa.
And then, so you were out of the house and working by 16, high school diploma. What did that force you to learn about yourself?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, unfortunately, my parents ended up not getting along very well, and the children were kind of the victim of that dysfunction. So I actually had to leave home at 16, and I didn't finish high school. But to me, it was more like, okay, great, now I can now control my own life. So I got got a job at the bank initially, then at a motorcycle shop. But I was really interested in electronics. So after a year or two, I managed to get an apprenticeship in a company that did electronics, and basically I ended up working as an electronics engineer, designing electronic circuitry. And then I started my own electronics company doing industrial electronics.
And then you took 10 months at 21 and went overland from South Africa to Kenya, then India to England in a Volkswagen bus. So what were you looking for on that trip?
Well, it's just I traveled quite a lot in South Africa itself. In fact, in those days, in the late 60s, you could hitchhike. Like at 14 years old, we hitchhiked 1,000 miles from Johannesburg to Cape Town. With a guitar and just might play somewhere at a cafe and they put you up or something, that kind of thing. So I was already quite used to traveling around by myself. And the opportunity, I met somebody who was also keen to go overland through Africa and get to know more of Africa, and then to end up in Europe, because I was also keen to get back to Europe. And I realized it was a good time in my life to be able to do that. At a certain point, you have kids and settle down. It's just you can't do that. So when I was 21, took a motorcycle and Volkswagen Combi, and two of us went through Africa from Cape Town up to Kenya, and then by boat across to India, and then India, traveled around India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and then to Turkey, Greece, and up to England. So that was about 9 or 10 months of traveling, of just staying wherever you wanted to stay for as long as you wanted to. So it was an amazing experience.
And you started reading philosophy and psychology more seriously on that journey. So what book or idea hit you the hardest?
Um, I didn't. I guess as a child, I must have asked somebody, "Well, what do philosophers do? What's a philosopher?" And kind of the impression I got was these are these really smart people that solve the big problems in the world. So that kind of appealed to me. Let's okay, solving big problems in the world sounds like something interesting. And then I actually started reading philosophy and philosophers. And I must say, I was very disappointed. I kind of said, is this the best we've done in 2000 years? Most philosophy books, or many philosophy books in the introduction say, we don't really know what philosophy is, but read the next 400 pages or whatever, and hang on, surely we should be able to do better than that. So it was an interest. And then also had a big interest in psychology, just learning about myself, human relationships, and so the intersection of philosophy and psychology, and then of course eventually computer programming and intelligence, it sort of quite naturally converged to my interest in AI.
You took your first software company from zero to something like 400 people through an IPO in 7 years. When I guess when you watched your company kind of go through an over expansion, which almost destroyed it. What did that near wipeout actually teach you?
Well, in those days, and I think it's true for most IPOs, there's so much marketing that you do. You have to really believe in what your company is going to achieve. And you have this whole marketing team talking you up. And then you've got lots of money coming in. And it's very difficult to actually keep a perspective. You kind of start to believe some of the hype that you've kind of created and as part of this momentum. And so, one of the things that I did, the mistake I made is we grew too quickly. We acquired a number of companies to grow more quickly and couldn't really manage and motivate the companies properly. And so they started losing money, and, it almost destroyed the company. And it's just, something you learn. And if you're lucky enough, you have good people on your team that can, with more experience, that can guide you, and which I didn't really have. So kind of had to learn the lessons ourselves, but managed to kind of recover from that. And yeah, I learned a lot about business, about myself, and so on. You go from having more money than you know what to do with. I mean, I bought a house in the most expensive part, like really a villa in the most expensive part in Johannesburg, and had a number of Porsches and so on. It was great. And then when the company didn't do well, basically I lost all of that. And what I learned is it's nice having money. It's nice being able to do these things, but it's not, it didn't destroy me at all. It was just, oh, okay, now I have to go back into renting a room somewhere, and driving a 5-year-old Honda. It's okay, But I used the money that I earned to basically buy additional shares in the company as the company went down. So I ended up doing quite well.
Good for you. So you've said that software being so fragile, so brittle, is what pushed you towards AI in the first place. So what was the specific moment you realized intelligence was the real problem to solve?
Yeah, so eventually when I sold my shares in the company, I really had enough time and money now on my hands to say, okay, what big problem do I want to solve? And the thing that was very obvious to me is how stupid software actually is. And I say that while I was very proud of my software, I think we did a really good job on developing the software ERP system. Still, if the programmer didn't think of a particular situation, it would just crash or give you an error message or not do. There's no common sense, and software can't really learn by itself. And but it was also clear to me from understanding hardware, software, and from philosophy and so on, that there really is no reason why computers can't or software can't be designed to think and learn and reason the way humans do. So, what more exciting challenge to work on than to crack that, to actually build thinking machines. So I took off 5 years to deeply study intelligence, all different aspects of intelligence, from epistemology, theory of knowledge. How do we know anything? How can we be certain? What is reality? What is free will? What is consciousness? To deeply understand cognition, and then also cognitive psychology. What do IQ tests measure? How do children learn? How does our intelligence differ from animal intelligence? And to really deeply understand all of these aspects of intelligence. And I did that for 5 years. And during that period, I came up with a design for AGI.
Yeah, I guess you kind of touched on this next question. So I was going to say that, yeah,
Mm.
it's, during that 5-year hiatus, what did your family and peers think of that choice?
I guess people who knew me well enough weren't surprised. So, so
And, out of epistemology, I don't know if I
mm,
said that correctly, development
mm.
psychometrics, and neuroscience, which field gave you the biggest unlock for how to actually build a thinking machine?
Um, Definitely, epistemology was, well, actually, two things: epistemology and psychometrics. I was actually very actively involved in helping to develop a new type of IQ test in South Africa, because the problem is that Black people did very poorly on Western IQ tests because of the cultural bias that they have. So a friend of mine actually did her PhD thesis to develop a new type of test that doesn't have the same cultural bias. So it levels the playing field, and in fact, it worked out really, really well. That it's it's a combination of having to quickly learn a new type of language and a new type of game. And I did the computerization of this test, where you basically externalize how people solve this problem. And we found that people that didn't have a good education still did very well on these tests. It really gave so that gave me a deep understanding of the different aspects of intelligence or cognition. And the one thing that I learned from that is that metacognition, thinking about your thinking, whether you do it automatically, consciously, or subconsciously, is actually the most important component of high level intelligence. Okay, we seem to have lost Sunny.
Sorry about that, everyone. Not sure what happened. Might have been an internet issue. Looks like we're still live. I'm going to take a second and see if I can re-invite Peter. Just give me a second. Okay, I just emailed him the link again. Let's see if we can get him back on. I'll just maybe summarize what was happening there. So I'm talking to a gentleman by the name of Peter Voss. Peter Voss is the gentleman who termed the word AGI, which is wild. And we were just having an amazing conversation before, for some reason, my StreamYard came to a screeching halt. It's probably something I did, and I apologize for that. I don't know exactly what. I think it's probably something to do with the internet. I am back. Collab. Yeah. Let me see if I can get Peter back on here. Anyways. Oh, there he is. Yay. Peter, my bad. Something happened. I don't know. I think I lost my internet. And so,
Right.
But look at that. We got more people watching still. That I apologize for that. So I'm sorry about that. I don't know what happened, but let's just keep going. Where did
All
you
right.
lose? Where did you lose me? I guess we can just keep going with the questions. I've got a few more lined up for you here. So the thing I was going to ask you about was, you've said that machine learning and deep learning can never get us to AGI. So when did that stop being a hypothesis and start being a conviction for you?
Oh, really, it fell straight out of my understanding of intelligence. So this is actually an interesting question because all of the big labs working on large language models, their starting point has never been understanding intelligence. Their starting point has been, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of compute. That's the hammer we've got. Kind of what nails can we find? And of course, it's been so incredibly successful. I mean, these large language models are amazing. Nobody thought that just scaling up data would get you to the kind of performance that we have. I mean, we use them to help us coding, we use it for research, we use summarization, brainstorming, and the technology really is amazing. But their starting point wasn't, let's understand intelligence. And the people in charge really don't think about the problem like that at all. And I can be very specific about that. Demis Hassabis, for example, brilliant guy, achieved a lot with AlphaFold and the work that they've done. He said in an interview recently, we need to build AGI in order to understand intelligence. So it's completely ass about face, but that's the mindset. And in fact, I happen to know the person in charge of their AGI effort, Shane Legg. He actually worked for me years ago, and he's a mathematician, and he doesn't think about the problem at all in terms of cognition or epistemology or concept formation or anything. He thinks of it as a statistical problem, as a mathematical problem. And that's the whole industry basically have this wrong. I spoke with Elon Musk, and I said, our approach, we work from first principles, basically. And I thought he would really like that because he always talks about first principle thinking. Said we start from first principles. We start from understanding what makes human intelligence so special. And he cut me off and said, oh, nobody knows what intelligence is. Intelligence is as intelligence does. which is kind of fortune cookie philosophy, So really the people that have the money, that have the momentum, that are working, on trying to work towards AGI, really don't have an understanding of intelligence. And
what is intelligence then?
okay, well, it's intelligence is a suitcase word. I mean, what we're interested in particular is what makes human intelligence so special? Because like Marvin Minsky said, intelligence, like consciousness, is a suitcase word. It encompasses a lot of different things. You have ant colonies have intelligence, and then people, get into this confusion and say, well, we have intelligence. What you really need to focus on is what makes human intelligence so special. What are the preconditions for human intelligence? And this is where epistemology, I mentioned how the cognitive test that I helped to develop gave me a good understanding how important metacognition is. And let me just talk a little bit more about that, and then I'll go back to epistemology. So as you probably know, Daniel Kahneman talks about system 1, system 2 thinking. So system 1 is the automatic subconscious thought that happens all the time, and then system 2 is the more deliberate, more often language-based thought. And system 2 is also our metacognition. This basically controls the automatic process. And that is incredibly important for intelligence. Animals don't have any significant metacognition. So our ability to be aware of what we're thinking about and to be able to control our thought patterns, when do we get stuck? How do we need to think about things differently? That metacognition is really an important aspect. The other, so that's one of the key differences or what makes human intelligence so special. The other thing is concept formation, and you get that from epistemology. Basically, how do we learn? We see instances of entities, of objects in the world, but what humans can do, we can generalize these and we can form abstractions, and we can say, well, these are animals, and these are objects, these are cars, these are motorcycles, and to very high level abstract concepts, which animals cannot do, is to build concepts on top of concepts, that you end up with very abstract things like honor or government or marriage and so on. So it's our ability to spontaneously and autonomously form abstractions or generalizations that makes human intelligence so special. Combine that with metacognition. So those are, there are obviously a lot of details to be filled in, but those are two of the kind of major insights that I think are essential for anyone who wants to deliberately develop AGI. Now, the big labs could stumble on AGI by accident if they, try enough things, brute force things and so on, but it's actually extremely unlikely. They have to abandon transformers. They have to abandon the current technology that they have. And which company is likely to do that they're actually going to, like I say, Jan LeCun is one of the few people who actually said large language models are a dead end, an off-ramp, a distraction. I'm not interested in large language models. So he's got the right idea, but who else is saying that? Nobody. They're all doubling down on got to build bigger data centers. I mean, look at Elon Musk. He's just $40 billion cursor acquisition. That's a Hail Mary, basically. I hope these guys will be able to build me a model that is competitive with the competition,
So where did your conversation with Elon land? I mean, you said you built your argument up first.
Well,
sounds
well, I mean, first of all,
the way you're approaching intelligence.
Well, I learned, in the discussion I had with him, I learned, it was like a half-hour discussion I had with him, um, is that I learned that he's not a partner. I mean, he doesn't invest in companies. Um, he's not a partner, and so it's not something I want to pursue. And I have immense admiration for what he's achieved. I mean, I drive a Tesla, and I think it's amazing what he's done with rockets and Starlink, and I mean, it's just I'm in awe of what he's achieved. But quite frankly, his moral compass, I'm not impressed with.
So, what's the single hardest thing you've had to unlearn on this journey?
That's a very good question, actually, because that's, I mean, what I had to unlearn, maybe not so much, because I really started from the ground up, building up, building up the theory of it and going through iterations. But certainly, what we find then when we have the discussion with potential partners and so on, what they have to unlearn now. For example, when my partner, co-founder in the business, Srini Pagityala, when he joined the company, and in fact, he often tells a story, he spent a few months having to unlearn stuff. And we actually see that when we're hiring people, if they have an AI background, the hardest part for them is to unlearn the stuff that they think they know. So that wasn't so much a struggle for me, because as I built it up from the ground up. I didn't start with large language models or big statistical systems. That I quite frankly, I can't remember the kinds of things. I've read literally hundreds of books and articles and went to dozens of conferences and so on. So all of the different influences shaped my understanding of AGI.
So, for people hearing about AGO,
IGO.
IGO.
Yeah, like you go,
first time.
I go. Yeah, IGO.ai.
Yeah, I won't forget that. IGO. What is it actually doing, and why does it matter?
Well, what we're doing now, we put our commercial business behind us, or put it on hold, I should say. I wouldn't say behind us. We put it on hold. I mean, the core technology that we've developed has already generated over $100 million in revenue. So we already have a proof point of the core technology, which is called cognitive AI as opposed to generative AI. And it's a neurosymbolic kind of approach. And what we are doing, we are at the moment a small team of about 12 people, and we are continuing to improve the learning ability of the system. So what we did is we took our commercial version and stripped out all of the handcrafted rules and ontologies, all the things that we had manually put into the brain. We stripped that out, starting about a year and a half ago, and started teaching the system like a child. Started teaching it like language and reasoning and so on. 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old. So we're now working at the sort of 5-6-year-old level, and by the time we get to 10, 11 years, the system will basically be able to learn pretty much by itself. I mean, then we kind of almost done. So it's to get through the 7, 8, 9-year-old. And so our team is basically building the curriculum to teach the system and the various tests that we do. And that's how we're developing it. But I'm currently funding the company, and I can only afford about a dozen people on my own. So we are currently looking for partners to scale up our team to about 50 people. To accelerate the development. And that's when, the earlier question was, when do we think we can get to AGI, to human level? And we have a very detailed plan of what still needs to be done. And we believe with 50 people, we could get that done in no more than 2 years.
Fascinating. You've already replaced thousands of call center agents for clients like 1-800-Flowers, right? With 7-figure ARR. What does that prove in terms of like in terms of what people are missing with this whole revolution?
Well, what does it prove? I guess it proves that we can do something. So, as a company, generating revenue and having a very successful. I mean, 1-800-Flowers had to hire 3,000 people just for 2 weeks during Valentine's Day. And how well do you train the people? Not super well. So with our technology, we were able to automate 90% of that very successfully. So we have some proof points in terms of what the technology is capable of, and that we have some commercial experience, from my taking a company public and generating revenue and so on, which hopefully should help give people confidence in that. But the one thing I want to mention specifically, and the reason why we put our commercial business on hold, is what I call the narrow AI trap. And it's a trap that pretty much everyone that has seriously worked on AGI, specifically focused on AGI, that pretty much everybody has fallen into that trap. And we ourselves as well, with our eyes open. It's basically, once you pick a particular commercial domain, or even once you pick a particular benchmark that you're trying to meet, you basically now use human intelligence to help solve that problem and write programs for that. So you're getting away from working on general intelligence, and instead are using your human intelligence. And DeepMind is a perfect example of that. DeepMind's mission was, when they started 10 years ago, was number one, solve AGI. Number two, solve all the problems in the world using AGI. That was their mission statement, very clear. Now, they've done virtually nothing on number one, and they've had some pretty good success on solving some of the specific problems. And it's that narrow AI trap, because you now determined to, become the best Go player. So what do? You use human ingenuity to write a program that is a good Go player, or that can teach itself Go. But you're not working on general intelligence or AlphaFold. You're now using human intelligence to write a program to be good at protein folding. And it's the same thing when you're trying to beat benchmarks. You have the ARC AGI challenge or something like that. You use human intelligence to figure out how can you tweak your program to get a good score on this test. And that's the exact opposite of what you need to do. When you're building AGI, you need to address the fundamentals of how can the system learn by itself. What are the mechanisms you need to develop for a system to be able to autonomously learn to do these things? And that's very, very different. And when you have a commercial business, when you have a commercial business, you have this constant pressure on, oh, we need these extra features. You have a new client, they have other requirements, and we want a better completion rate, and we want this and we want that. And, you use normal engineering basically to solve these problems, and you get further and further away from building a system that can learn by itself.
It's so refreshing to hear that, because you're absolutely, I remember in electrical engineering, when we learned about AGI, it was a system that could teach itself, that could learn itself. Yet you're totally right that these LLMs are these like static, even this morning, I think one of the smartest ones was telling me that it was like 2 years ago or something. I'm like, you're supposed to be like all knowing and you don't even know what the date is. Like, how can that be? So,
Right.
okay, I have another question for you. So, DARPA calls your approach the third wave of AI,
Mhm.
cognitive AI instead of statistical AI. Can you give me the 1 minute version for a founder who hasn't like heard of this framing before?
Yes, we found this very useful, the DARPA's three waves of AI. And the first wave is basically what's now called good old fashioned AI. So that was the stuff that was done in the 80s, 90s, and so on. Expert systems, and IBM's Deep Blue chess champion would be an example of that. So largely logic based systems. And that's the first wave. The second wave then hit us like a tsunami about 13 years ago, when people figured out how they could actually get neural networks to do useful stuff by scaling them up massively. So the second wave is basically big data statistical systems, and we're still riding that wave right now. But DARPA, already recognized that there's going to be a third wave, and that is adaptive, basically, where it's all about the system being able to learn in real time and to adapt and learn new things. In fact, my first AI company was called Adaptive AI Inc. A2I2. So it's that third wave is, and we now call it cognitive AI, but adaptive, self-learning, autonomous learning in real time. And there are some, there actually, this is actually worth talking about. There are such significant advantages in having a system that can learn incrementally in real time. One of them is you need massively less data to train the system, because you can now target it. It learns from everything you feed it, not just like statistical averages. And and as I said earlier, a child can learn language and reasoning with a few million words. Now, instead of a few trillion, that's a million times less training data, which means you can now concentrate on the quality of the data you're training it with instead of the quantity. Whereas all the LLM vendors are scrambling, how can we find more data? Where can we find more data? But once you need much less data to train the system, you can concentrate on the quality. Secondly, it needs much less computation. We do all of our training on an off-the-shelf computer. We don't need massive GPUs and data centers and crunch away for months on end, spending billions of dollars, because learning incrementally is just so much more efficient. Which also means you can now have your own private AI, and you don't have to share data with anyone. So it can basically run on the edge. It can run on your own local computer, and you can train it with your own values and your own needs. So the advantages you get out of true incremental real-time learning are just phenomenal.
Your thesis is that AGI should eradicate poverty, cure cancer, educate the world. Right now, the field is optimizing for generating art, code, and ad copy. Like, how do we get back on track?
That's also why it's important for us to find a partner who shares our vision of how AGI should be deployed, and that it shouldn't be about just capturing people's attention, getting them addicted to it, and basically stealing their IP. It should really be to boost human agency and to boost human flourishing. And one of the things as a company we will not do is we will not take your data. We will not push advertising on you. There's plenty of money to be made. It's a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. Why would we want to sell advertising, go down that road? I mean, that's so anti-human, basically anti-flourishing. So you clearly need to have the right kind of philosophy as well as having the right technology to give us a positive future. And so we believe that the right technology will give us the power, the strength to be able to have the right philosophy and policy.
Peter, this has been what an amazing interview. So I was going to say, so if we're sitting down, let's say again in 5 years, and AGI is real, in the Peter Voss sense of real, right? Well, what does an ordinary person's day actually look like?
I have no idea. Really, I mean, things will change so much. What I believe a lot of people will do, I mean, there's going to be a lot of friction. Politicians, lawyers, all the professions are going to push back and try and keep their employment unions and so on. They're going to push back. How long they will be able to delay things, I don't know. But for those people who benefit from AI through mechanisms we really don't quite understand in terms of truly being able to do what they want to do, is and of course having your own personal AGI will allow you to also generate revenue. It's basically, but whether everybody will be able to, or who will be able to do that, you can use your AGI to help you basically run a business. But what I think a lot of people will want to do when they have the freedom, apart from spending much more time with their families and things they want to do, is to help the rest of the world get be able to utilize this technology. People, people across, I mean, in America, but also across the world, a lot of people are going to need help need human help in order to optimize this technology. And I think that's going to be what will occupy a lot of people. It'll be very satisfying to see that, how helping people to get the benefit of AGI and uplift them. I've also written about how having your own personal assistant, and the reason I double up on the word personal is you own it. It serves your agenda, not some mega corporation. So it's your ownership and control of it that you have. And it's also hyper personalized to you. So it learns, your history, your goals, and what you do, what you want to do, and so on. So it's a true personal assistant. But it's kind of also like a little angel on your shoulder that it'll help you avoid some mistakes, where you might want to emotionally break off a relationship that maybe you shouldn't, or make an investment that you shouldn't, where you'll have this, I say, this little angel on your shoulder that can kind of talk sense to you. But in another way, it'll actually be like an exocortex, like an extension of your own brain, because it'll be so integrated to your own thought and life that it basically allows you to think better, to increase human agency and human flourishing.
I mean, just what an amazing story. Thank you so much. I definitely wasn't expecting to end my week off on such a bright note. I would, if you're open to it, I would love to have you back on the show anytime you want. I have, like I said, a bazillion questions, but I think that does it for today. We got a good hour in. Normally my show is 20 minutes. But yeah, I couldn't hold back. I needed to get this one done today. So thank you. I see about 30 people are watching us live. Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. And Peter, anything you want to share before we bring this one to a close?
Yeah, well, just a few things. So first of all, anybody interested, I've written quite a few articles on Substack. It'll be easy to find that. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or X. And if you know anybody who's interested in potentially partnering with us to help make this positive future of AGI happen, please let me know. I mean, we are looking for partners. We want to, scale our company, accelerate what we're doing, and also have people who share our vision and want to work with us to do that. So by all means, contact me.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, again, what an awesome hour. I'm gonna bring this stream to an end. Peter, just hang back for a minute. Again, thank you all for tuning in. Until next time, cheers.